Hey, good evening. You're all doing well. Today we're learning Maseches Makkos Daf Chaf Beis. We're starting 4 lines from the bottom on Chaf Aleph Amud Beis. Last word on the line is Esvei. Today we're going to learn, as mentioned, Chaf Beis. Tomorrow we're going to what's today? Nice. Tomorrow we're going to learn as much as we can. Chaf Gimel is just a massive blot. And we'll finish up over the weekend and start the next Masechta. We'll be having our Siyum Mir Hashem on Sunday. Anybody who's interested in joining, please send me $20 to my cell phone, Venmo or Zelle, or cash. Yitz Brandis is going to whip up something special. I don't even know what that means, but he has yet to fail us. So I see you there looking at me in the laptop. No, you're going to do a good job. Last night we learned about a unique halacha, a distinction between Shabbos and Yom Tov. And 5 lines from the bottom on Chav Aleph Amud Beis, the line reads that Amar Rabbi yesh chilik malachos b'Shabbos ve'en chilik malachos b'Yom Tov. On Shabbos, if you do multiple similar isurim, yesh chilik malachos, you'll be held accountable for each of them. But on Yom Tov, we make no such distinction. So we're going to now speak about that for much of today, for some of today, I should say. Says the Gemara Esvei, hold on one second. Esvei Abaye, ve'ein chilik malachos b'Yom Tov. Are you sure that we don't say chilik malachos? After all, v'hatnan. We have a Mishnah. More correctly, this should be v'hatanya. It's a brisa. Hamevashel gid, talking about the gid hanashe. If you're mevashel the gid hanashe b'chela b'Yom Tov, v'chala b'Yom Tov, so that's milk and meat, v'achlu, and you ate it, loke chamish. You get 5 different sets of malchus. Lo mishum ochel gid, lo mishum mevashel b'Yom Tov, shelo l'tzorech, which is interesting because that assumes that this is like the shower discussion on Yom Tov, right? If you're doing havara shelo l'tzorech here, the brisa considers that to be an iser deoraisa. So that's why showering is a big deal. It's not to say that it's us. You just have to ask a shayla, right? There's ways to do it. If you do it aver, less than 50% of your body, there's ways to do it. But just to blanketly and flippantly say it's mutter to shower on Yom Tov because I hold, and then no, you got the halachic process is real, and we should be concerned about isur d'oraisa. So here, the cooking of the gid is going to be mevashel b'Yom Tov shelo l'tzorech, v'lo mishum mevashel gid b'chalav, v'lo mishum ochel basar b'chalav. Right? Because these are separate isurim. Interestingly, it leaves out the third of the trifecta of basar b'chalav. Basar b'chalav is a triple isur: cooking, eating, and hana. Why is it? Do it on purpose or this guy? We have to, yeah.
You can't accidentally do this.
This is not an accident. It's also, he would be, this is all on purpose. It also requires hasra. In order to get malchus, you need hasra. So this guy is really not a tzaddik, but it is interesting, the Gemara. Well, that's true. Very good. If you're a Talmud Chacham, because the only need for Hasra is to be Mavchen Bein Shogeg L'Mezid. But if you're a Talmud Chacham, there's no need to distinguish. Beloke, turning to the top of our blot today, Beloke Mishum Havara, and for lighting a fire. Okay, so we had Mavashel and we had Havara. Aren't those two things representing the same thing? You're cooking a food with heat or you're lighting a fire. So it says the Gemara, Vim Isa, if what you want to say is true, that on Yom Tov there's no chiluk malachos, why are we machalik in the malachos here? Vim Isa, then lo mechayev, we should not, Vim Isa, then mishum havar lo mechayev, then the fire shouldn't be a problematic to ichayev le mishum bishulo. Because what are you doing when you cook? You light a fire and you cook at the same time as one maisa. Here we're being machalik in the malachos of Yom Tov. Right? I did one maisa of lighting the fire, but I'm registering the act of lighting the fire for doing 2 different things. But Rava, in yesterday's blot at the end of the daf, told me, Ein chilik malachos b'Yom Tov. So Kasha says the Gemara, maskim, a maskim. These 2 isurim are too close. And because Ein chilik malachos b'Yom Tov, it wouldn't be 5 if we did bishul and havara. So we have to swap one of them out. So it says the Gemara, apik havara, the ayel gid hanosha shel nevela. You're right, 100%. Let's get rid of the Havara and let's replace the Havara with a separate Isser because Havara and Bishul would be 1. Granted, you did multiple Isurim. It's a 6th Isser, but there's only 5 Onshin of Malkos. And here we replace Gid Anasha, which we already had, but it's not Stam Gid Anasha, which is the sciatic nerve, which is Usr in its own right, but it was that of a Nevela, which was not kosher. Over here, the Brisa touches on the brisa that of the 5 isurim, 2 are on achila and 3 are on bishul. But the isa, if you want to say that we're changing it to a gid anosha shel nevela, then it should be shalosh al achila. So uchayev. Ella, you're right. We accept that question as well, and therefore apik havar v'ayal atze ashera. So what we do is we take out the iser, the punishment of malkos for havara. That we say you're right. Ein chilik malachos b'yom tov. And what do we say was the 5th set of malkos that you're chayev? V'ayal atze ashera. We put in the fact that the wood that he used was for an ashera tree. As harase, how do we know that we'd be chayav on malkos for such a thing? Mehacha v'lo yidbak biyadacha meuma. Okay, so it says the Gemara, Amar le Ravacha b'rei de Rava, le Ravashi. If that's what you're saying is our 5, and there's no chiluk malachos, and Yantif God, I got it. But v'lil kinami mishum lo savi toeva el beisecha. Why you brought avodah zarah stuff into your house? That's also its own isser. Why is it not a 6th set of malchos? Says the Gemara, you're right. What we're talking about is that the wood that you used to cook was with the wood from hektish, which has an isser d'oraisa to use, and you should get malchos for that as well. That we should not burn that which belongs to the Eibishter, and that means that Rava can stand on his own 2 feet as a conclusion that ein chiluk malachos b'yom tov. Says the Gemara, Siman Shanboy Shanaz. What is this talking about? So we've been talking about these cases of stacking multiple Isurim. The Mishnah at the bottom of Chaf Aleph Amud Aleph spoke about a case that a person could do a one action and they would be chayev for a whole host of things that they did wrong. It's actually at the very top line of Chaf Aleph Amud Beis. The case was Yesh Choresh Telem Echad B'chayev Alav Mishum Shmona Lavin. That was what we learned yesterday. 8 Lavin. And the Gemara is now going to throw like a dozen questions out and answer none of them. And our question in each case is going to be, why don't we add this isser? And why don't we add this isser? And why? Once you're stacking, I can come up with other ways to do this. And look at all of the creativity of the Gemara. Maskef Lara Voshai, we're a quarter of the way down Chav Beis Menel. B'lichshov nami hazoreya benachal eson. We know that by the egla arufa that you had to bring the animal to a nachal eson, to a river, and the halacha is over there asher lo aved bova lo yizareh. You can't plant that. So what if our case was, look at the very top line of Chaf Aleph Amud Beis where our Mishnah talks about it. It said yesh choresh telem echad b'chayav lo mishum shmona. It should be 9. What's the 9th? This one, if you're working the ground of a place of Nachal Esan where the Egla Rufa was done. But as Harase, how do we know you be Chayv Malkos for that? Why don't we add that? Doesn't get answered. You're walking, and as you walk, you blot out Hashem's name. Hashem's name is spelled out in ink and dirt, whatever the Mitzvah says. You step on it and ruin it. Huh? The corn maze. How do we know that there's a chiyuv malkos there? Not answered. Why isn't that our 10th set of malkos in the case of our Mishnah? Another question. Says beharoso. What if while you're walking, you're also cutting off a lesion for your tzaras? Because that's normal. You have to keep it. You're not allowed. You have to keep it. You can't cut it off. This comes up obviously by bris milah, the famous yesod. There's a lav to cut off taras. What if it's on the orla and it's Yom Hashmini? So then I say dochelosase, no problem at all. But here you're not doing an asay. We're stacking Isser. Why don't we say that we have an 11th Isser? And here's another one. Maskef labai halfway down. While he's walking, the Kohen is undoing the choshen me'al ha'efod v'amaser b'adei aron. Or he's pulling out the poles from the Aron, Bazarasa Mehacha, Lo Yasuru, Lo Yizacha Choshen. Why don't we have that Isser? And still more, Maskif Lo Ravashi, B'lichshov Nami HaChoresh B'atzei Ashera. Let's say that your plow, that word I couldn't remember the other day, your plow is B'atzei Ashera. It's made out, the plow is made out of wood that belongs to Avodah Zarah. Oh, the Gemara is really pushing to be like, what do you mean 8? What does that mean 8? I could come up with 100 different things, and we're going to come up with still more. And what we're really doing is we're pressure testing our Mishnah to say, I don't understand what you meant by 8. How did you get to your list of 8? And the Gemara does not answer these questions. We're gonna end this Mishnah without the answers. A little frustrating. That's why one of the challenges of Daf Yomi is we don't have the ample time to learn more. Very good. You could have been eating a cheeseburger. So let's see. There's still others before we get there, but you're thinking in the right direction. We said hachoresh batze asher v'asaras mecha v'lo yidbak b'yal chamuma maskiv laravina v'lechshov nami akotze tzilanos tovas. This we know it's usher to cut down fruit trees. So while you're plowing, you knock down a pear tree. V'asaras mecha ki mimenu sochal v'otza lo sichros. Amar le Rav Zira le Reb Mani v'lechshov nami ki gon to amar shvua shelo echrosh b'yom tov. I make a shvua. My mom, it's like we're pulling from everywhere now, right? It's 8. No, it's 16. We're up to like I don't even know. I didn't count. I have no. It's a lot of questions. Says the Gemara, that one I'm going to answer. The shvua on Yantif you can't do because Hasam lo kachala shvua because mushba ve'omed mehar Sinai. A person who makes a shvua that they are not going to plow on Shabbos, that's not a shvua. Why? You can't make a shvua on something that halacha already mandates for you. I'm going to make a shvua that I'm not going to murder anyone today. That's not a shvua. You're mushba ve'omed. This phrase you will see throughout Shas periodically. Mushba ve'omed mehar Sinai. We've seen it a number of times. You can't make a shvua where the Torah already forbade you from doing that thing. I'm not going to cheat. I'm not going to steal. What are you talking about? You're a zero. It doesn't matter. And on Yantif, you can't say that because it's already Aser. Says the Gemara, no, I'll give you a good answer as to how the Shua could still be a stacked on Isser. Amarle, first of the long lines, 12 lines, 10 lines from the bottom. Amarle, you're going to Amar Shua Shelo Achrosh Bein B'chol Bein B'Yom Tov. Oh, now you're saying I won't plow on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, or Shabbos, or in this case, or Yantif. So here, the migu de chala ale shvua bechol chala ale nami biyom tov. So now I really go. This is called an iser kolel, and an iser kolel is where I have a chalos of the shvua in one place, and now I can extend the chalos of that thing to another place, even if that place is mushba b'omed me'ar Sinai. So let's say we have a yontif that starts Tuesday night. So Tuesday during the day, I make a shvua, no plowing on Tuesday, no plowing on Wednesday. Wednesday's Yontif Doraisa, Tuesday's Chol. So it says the Gemara that if I make that shvua, then it's chal even on Yontif, then I can have my 16th, whatever the number is, case of Makkos from our case in the Mishnah. Again, we're pressure testing how we can stack Isurim, because meaning this has nothing to do with anything, right? These are just we're asking the difficult question of, is this what the Mishnah meant of 8? 8 is a weird number. How did you get to 8? What about all of these other ones? And again, it's frustrating that we don't have an answer to most of them. By Shvuah, we have an answer that actually does apply, Taka. All the other ones, we don't know why they don't apply.
Well, I'm saying that not about the numbers, but about the shul itself.
Yeah.
What would be the possible benefit of being able to?
It doesn't matter.
There isn't, right?
No. It could be that you just want to show Hashem you love him and say, today I'm going to learn Torah all day. I make a nether, that I'm not going to plow tomorrow. I think I'm safe saying I'm not going to plow tomorrow. I think I'm safe even if I were to make a nether, but what? That is. The elbows and the jabs are coming tonight, but that is much deserved. A 4-letter word of plow. I couldn't remember yesterday. Oh, what? Oh my gosh. Please tell me that's not good. Okay, so that's what the Gemara says. Says the Gemara, no, I don't accept your Isser Kola. The fact that you can stack one shoe on top of another if it's Chal during the week and then onto Yantiv. Why not? Because Midi the Isi B'She'ela Loktani. We're not going to be able to include an Isser Shvua if I'm able to do She'elas Chacham and undo the Shvua. And by a shvua like this, I can go to a chacham and say, please be matir my shvua, please undo it. I didn't mean it. We learned about this, we learned about it in Dharma a little bit. We're about to learn Maseches Shavuos, and then we'll get into it much more. That's what the Gemara says can't be. Says the Gemara Vilo, is that really true? Hare Hektish. Our Mishnah at the top said that the case was Bishor v'chamor v'hein mukdashin. But something that's mukdash, you can do she'ela on. It's a great question, right? Because we had that. That was one of the 8. So if you want to tell me that that our Mishnah is not going to be Ktani cases of Midi de Isi b'She'ela, that's Pasha not true, because our Mishnah is talking about a case of Hektish, and I can do She'ela and Hektish.
Do you have to redeem?
Good question. Very good question, but I don't know the answer to it. I just know that it's spoken about. But here, no, in this case, I don't think it has to be redeemed. It's just the point is that I'm able to go to a Chacham and undo it. So once I'm able to undo it, so that means that maybe you do have to do a pidyon. I don't know. The short answer is I don't know. So it says the Gemara that can't be v'harei hektish. It says the Gemara what? No. It could be that it's hektish, but it's b'bechor, because a bechor is kadosh merechem. That's just how it's born. You don't make it into hekdesh, and there's no sheila that can undo the status of a bechor. I v'harei nazir. What about nazir? Because that was the case that we said at the top of Chaf Aleph Amud Beis as well. The nazir b'beis tuma. Says the Gemara, you're right. A regular nazir does have sheila. We learned about this in Maseches nazir. Kamuvan. Says the Gemara, oh no, we're talking about the nazir shimshon, because nazir shimshon is forever and you can't undo it. Says the Gemara, yeah, that might be true, but Nazir Shimshon, bar itmuye lemesimhu. You're allowed to become tamei when you're Nazir Shimshon. And the whole example on the top of Chaf Aleph Amud Beis was you becoming tamei. That was one of your sets of Makkos. So that can't be that it's Nazir Shimshon. So says the Gemara, Ella, hai Tana Isser Kola Lesli. Says the Gemara, it must be that our Tana doesn't hold of Isser Kolel, and he undercuts, he pulls the carpet out of the last 10 questions. He doesn't hold of Isser Kolel. And therefore Shua doesn't apply at all.
What's this?
Isser Kolel was what we discussed earlier about the possibility of saying I make a neder or a shvua, I should say, that I'm not going to plow on Tuesday, which is chol, or on Wednesday, which is yativ. And while there is a shita that holds like that, our Mishnah doesn't hold like that. So shvua is just not shaykh. You can't even bring any of it because you're not allowed to ever. There's no shvua. There's no kolel. And because there's no kolel, you can never make one on yontif because that's mushba ve'omei. The Torah already asers you from doing that. If you hold that there's no Isser kolel, then no shvua would ever apply in Makkos on Shabbos ever. No matter what the shvua is, no matter how that doesn't matter. Because if you don't hold the Isser kolel, then I can't ever come up with a scenario that I'd be chayiv on my shvua on Shabbos or yontif. Amar Rabbi Shaya, Amar Bia Shor Psule HaMukdashim Loke Shnaim, or Loke, taking out the word Shnaim, that's a machlokas. If one mates an ox that's psule mukdashin, even with a cow, which is its mate, it's the same. It's not kilai behema as it relates to the genus and species of the animals. That's what they're supposed to do. Those two animals are supposed to mate. Bulls and cows are normal. However, because the bull was psule mukdashim, it's ki'ilu another animal, and then you have an iser malkos for kilai behema. That's unbelievable. Huge chiddush. It's a huge chiddush. And Amr Yitzchak hamanhig b'shor psula hamukdashim. Even if I manhig the two together, meaning we have an iser kilai behima of that you're not allowed to have shor b'chamor yachdav. You can't even have them under the same plow. Lokesh harei guf echad. Who you're right, they're the same type of animal, but vaso kasuv kishnei gufim. But they're really different in that one's psule mukdashin and one's not psule mukdashin. Such a chiddush. The Gemara throws it in like it's a davar pasha. It's not a davar pasha. I mean, it is a davar pasha, but you see what I see. It just seems from Rabbi Shaya and Rabbi Yitzchak that when an animal is psulei mukdashin, it's no longer the same species as its mate. Afal pi that genetically, biologically, visually, a cow is a cow and a bull is a bull. Yeah, but if it's psulei mukdashin, the shore, and it mates with a regular chulin cow, aser. Next Mishnah, and this is the practical parts of doing Malkos, not that we should ever know from it, but Kama Malkin also, how many Malkos do we give? This is a Machlokes Tanaim. We were usually quick to answer this, but it's Taka Machlokes Tanaim. The Mishnah says, Arbaim Chaser Achas, Shneimar B'mispar Arbaim, Minyan Shehu Samuch LeArbaim. What a unique drasha. What a unique drasha. Let's learn the Pasuk inside. The Pasuk says, no, V'haya im bin hakos harasha v'pilu hashofet v'ko lefanav k'dei rishaso b'mispar. And then the next pasuk says arba'im yakenu. So our drasha is taking the last word from the previous pasuk, b'mispar arba'im yakenu. And what does that sound like to us? The number 40 you shall hit him. Look at the drasha. Minyan shuhu samuch le'arba'im.
I think who needed the word mispar.
What?
Yeah.
The limud is, I think, who needed the word mispar. Mispar is obviously extra. That's why it must be some club.
Yes, sir.
Right? Just our boy, there's another pasuk somewhere that says our boy yakenu. What do you need to mispar our boy? I wouldn't know what boy means the number 40. Does that make sense?
No, it doesn't make sense. None of us would have done this without Chazal deviating from the pashtus. Yeah,
but that's where they're learning.
Yeah. No, I understand. My reaction is that this doesn't feel
Boy in the first place.
Yeah.
Right, if it's supposed to be 39, why does it?
Just write 39. Or just say chaser acha, whatever, because that's our lashon. Is that right? So like my reaction is how in the world did Chazal figure that Gemara is going to say that phrase in a minute. That Gemara is going to say that phrase in a moment when we get into the Mishnah
It
itself.
looks like it's so clear, like our button. Okay.
It looks like it. Even though the drush is quirky, and Rashi here says that it's smicha. It says mispar, and then it's samuch to arbaim yakenu. It's a number that's close to 40. Just
Nothing closer than 30.
nothing close. Well, 41, right? Depends how you count, counting from up to down or down to up. Again, I'm not saying it's complicated to understand the Mishnah, but to understand the thinking of the Tana who did that part's sophisticated. I don't know. Rabbi Huda Omer, sorry, I'm a balabas. Chas v'shalom. I don't mean to say he's a balabas, but he learns it b'pashtos. Arbaim shlemos huloka. V'heichen huloka. Where does the extra one go? V'heichen huloka is hayasera, bank seifa, between his shoulder blades. We'll see soon that the general Makkos were hit across the width of the back with 2/3 on the back, 1/3 wrapping around to the front, which we'll soon see. And here the Gemara says that the 40th one was not that way. So they'd give, according to Rabbi Yehuda, 39 are across the back, and one is between the shoulder blades. Okay. What? It's 39 plus 1. Meaning even Rabbi Yehuda knows that there's something going on with 39. It's still different. But that may be driven by another factor, which we're going to see right now. That ein omdenoso el b'makos ru'uyos lehishtalesh. All of the malkos that are given out were at the very bottom line of Chav Beis Amud Aleph. All the malkos given out have to be divisible by 3. So they're going to be omed. They're going to do a medical assessment. They'll bring out the prison doctor and they'll say, what can this person handle? They'll say, well, he's got a good blood pressure, or he has this cardiac issue, or he's already dying. Whatever the assessment is, it's divisible by 3. You're not going to get an 8 out of that. It's going to be 6. It's going to be 9, 12, v'chulei. Amdu lekabel arbaim v'lo kamiktzas. Let's say that they said, yes, this guy can get full 39. Really, this means 39. We're not in Rabbi Yehuda anymore. So says the Gemara, and he got part of them, and then they interrupted to check on him. Then putter. Once he gets to that level, then he is putter. So that means, let's say they did 15, and they're checking him. He's a disaster, and they now assess him. Bezdin assess him. They said he can't have any more. Then he's putter from the rest. You don't come back tomorrow and fill in the gaps. You're done. Imdu lekabel shmona esrei. Let's say that we thought he could only get 18. Umishalaka, after the 18th, amdu sheyachol hu lekabel arbaim. So then the Gemara says over here, the Mishnah says putter as well. That's interesting. Whatever the Chachamim paskin on you, of what you can tolerate, is final. We'll soon see that that's not always true, but certainly from the frame of our Mishnah, it appears that way. We're on Chav Beis Amud Beis at the open of the Mishnah, my time. Yeah, it doesn't say that in our Mishnah, but it seems to indicate, but it doesn't say that, because why were they stopping in the middle? It does seem that way. But again, it doesn't say it b'fem malei, but that is our understanding of the Mishnah. And it could be that the Gemara will say that, although it doesn't say it in today's Gemara. So my time, why did you say 39? Iksiv arbaim b'mispar. Hava amina arbaim minyana. Arbaim b'minyana. If the order of the words would have been 40 is the count, arbaim b'mispar, then okay, 40 is the count. Hashta dechsiv b'mispar arbaim. Now that it says the word number first and the word 40 second, so this, as mentioned before, is b'mispar is the previous pasuk and arbaim is next. Minyan shehu sochem es ha'arbaim. There, again, for a complex, to me, seemingly an unknown reason, it is, I should say better, I don't know what motivated them to learn this not b'pashtus. That's what I should say. That part I don't understand. It's the number that gets us close to 40, namely 39. And Omar Rava, what a beautiful thing to hear about Chazal. Rava says, Kama tipshoi shar inshi. How stupid can people be? The kaime mekame sefer Torah. They stand up when there's a Sefer Torah, but v'lo kaimei mekame gavra rabba. But they don't stand up in front of a chashuv rav who knows how to learn. Te'ilu b'Sefer Torah ksiv arba'im v'asu rabbanan and batzru chada. The Torah says 40. The Chachamim come along and they say, no, the Torah meant 39. So who's the crazy one? We're so frum to stand up when it comes to the Sefer Torah being up, but when the Rav gets an aliyah, we don't get out of our chair. That's completely backwards. The Chachamim are the lens to the Torah. We would have nothing. We say this all the time, that we don't understand how Chazal darshan things. This is like the most classic, complex example as to why we don't understand Chazal. But that's the emes. And the Chachamim have the capacity. Our Chachamim today paskin shilas, but back in the day, in the drasha period of the Tanaim and Amoraim, they had something very, very special, and it was only through them that we were able to understand the Torah. And I wrote this in my siddur next to Rabbi Shmuel, that it is only through these Yud Gimel Midos that we even understand the Chumash. So the Chachamim who implemented the Yud Gimel Midos, yes, they're technical and they're dry. Kal v'chomer, Gzera Shava, all of those, they may be technical and dry. You should read the bottom of the art scroll that gives an explanation and samples of each one. We would not know halacha like we know it. We wouldn't know anything about Torah without that lens with which to look through, which is Yud Gimel Midos Shator Nidrash Hasbin. So if we're going to stand up for the Torah, and of course we do without blinking, we should all the more so, a kol shekain. And we'd be considered fools for not doing so. We should always stand up if a Rav is in the room. That doesn't mean you stand up the whole time. There are halachos. By the Ashkenazim, as long as a Rav or a parent or anyone that you're supposed to stand up for is in Daled Amos, you're supposed to stand up for them. Ashkenazim typically hold that it's done twice in a sitting. So let's say my father's here. So if my father walked back and forth, so my obligation would be twice, and then after that, I fulfilled my mitzvah of kibbud avayim. A Rav, same thing. By Sfardim, it's not that way. Sfardim stand up every time. And that's, by the way, part of their culture. They are Mechabed Rabbanim. Sorry, Ashkis, they're just much better. It's a whole different ballgame. Kissing their hand, kneeling. I mean, there's a whole other league of what the Sfardim do. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, in contrast, Arba'im Shlemos. He says that it's 40. Sorry, I lost my spot there for a second. Amar Rabbi Yitzchak, my time at Rabbi Yehuda. Because Dichsiv, Ma HaMakkos Eilem Ben Yadecha. What are these Makkos? The pasuk says this. Actually, let's just read the whole pasuk inside. The pasuk says in Zechariah, "What are these Makkos that are between your Yadecha?" In context, this means between your shoulder blades. V'amar Asher Hu Kesi Beis Me'ahavoy. What does this show you? That there is a makkah that is done between your shoulder blades. So again, like before, he believes in the 39, but he knows there's a 40th. And this is why it's from the pasuk in Zechariah that Zechariah was indicating that there is this one blow of the Malkos that's done between your shoulder blades. 39 go in another location that we will soon see, and the 40th goes in between the shoulder blades. And we don't see how that's measured, right? We don't have an amida for that. It's only one hit, but that's what the Gemara says. V'Rabbanan, the Rabbanan. What? Oh, that's a great question. According to the Rabbanim, what do you do with the pasuk in Zechariah? Because the pasuk in Zechariah seems clear that there's one hit between the shoulder blades. Says the Gemara, and we would not hire them in any of the ATT schools if this is how they functioned. That's how they used to hit the kids in school, right between the shoulder blades. That's what the Gemara seems to say. We had said, Ein omden ele b'makos haruyos v'chule. We had made a diuk from our Gemara, laka in, lo laka lo. We had said that if a person started to get their malkos and then they were assessed that they had maxed out what they could handle medically, then they're patur. The implication is that's only if the malkos started, laka in, lo laka lo. If the malkos had not started yet and there was another amida, let's say the doctor walks in, he says, I think, Ploni Almoni can handle 18. 5 minutes later, he comes back and he says, I think Ploni Almoni can handle 24, right? So then seems to be that if the Malkos hadn't started between those two moments, we accept the second of those psukim. That's what the diuk is. Or aminu amdu lekabel arba'in v'chazru v'amdu she'ein yachol lekabel arba'in pater. However, amdu lekabel shmona esrei v'chazru v'amdu she'yachol lekabel arba'in pater. And Amar Rav Sheshes lo kasha hada amdu liyomei hada amdu lemachar liyom uchra. It depends. If, let's say I'm the Dayan and Ploni Almoni is the Baal Din, and he comes in and I assess, I look at him, and he's kind of slouched over when he walks in. I'm like, okay, he looks a little bit weak. I don't think he can handle 39 Makkos. I'm going to give him, I'll give him 24 Makkos. All of a sudden, he stands up tall. He starts to look healthy. I'm like, this guy gets a full 39. So that, because it's biyome, it's on the spot, my assessment stands. And then, even though I changed my number, but Pashat, I misassessed in the first number. So then we allowed the change. Masha Ein Kain. If I'm going to be switching today to tomorrow, tomorrow's numbers, that doesn't work. If I change the next day, so then the halacha doesn't stand. Then that's not how it works. Avar Avera, new Mishnah, halfway down, Chaf Beis and Beis. We're going to learn to the very last line of this page, and then tomorrow we'll start right at the top of the fresh Gemara. Ovar Avera sheyesh ba shnei labin. Let's say a person does one action that has two labin. Amduhu, they assess him. Omeid echad loke upater. They amduhu omeid echad. They do one measurement for him. Loke upater, and after those malkos, they're done. V'im lab. If they don't do that, then loke umisrape v'chozer v'loke. If they're not measuring him on both, they only measure him on one. So then on the one, they'll give him malkos. And then after he heals, they'll come back and do it again. So it's either grouped together or viewed individually. Tanya ein omdin omed echad l'shnei lavin. We're not allowed to do two lavin together. Says the Gemara. Amar Rav Sheshes lo kasha. Ha de amduhu le'arbaim v'chada. Ha de amduhu le'arbaim v'tarte. So let's just take the second number because the math works easier. Let's say a person does two isurim, and the chachamim assess him and they say he can't handle 39 times 2. That's too much. 78 is a lot. But he can handle 42, which is divisible by 3. No problem. That's what we do. I give him the 42. That's both isurim all together. However, if he was only given an assessment of being able to handle 41, so that means that they'll give the 39 and then they won't do more. That's what it means. That's how we understand our Mishnah. And lastly, for today, let's discuss the practical, how do we give Malkos? Please do not try this at home. It only applies in Bezdin. Don't get any clever ideas. Ketzad Malkanoso. So what you do is Kofes Shtei Yados Al Ha'amud. You tie both of his hands to a pillar. Elsewhere, it's described that this was a little bit lower to the ground. If you look at Rashi over here, Rashi is 8 lines into the wide lines. Rashi says right on the Mishnah there, Dibur Maschal Al Ha'omed. Al Ha'omed. Eitz echad na'utz bekarka. There's a piece of wood that's stuck into the ground. Ugavoa keneged shtei amos o amo b'chetzi. Shtei amos is 3 feet. So I'm 5'10", 5'10 and a half. That means I have to be bent over in order to tie my hands down to that. That is the position in which one is given Malkos. So let's go back to our Mishnah. So he's got his hands tied on this thing. Both sides. The Chazan HaKnesses, the person who's in charge, he pulls on the person's clothes. Im nikru, if the clothes tear, then they tear. Im niframu, if they get frayed, so be it. Until his heart is revealed, until his shirt is basically torn off. The person who's going to do the punishment stands on the stone. It's actually not directly behind him, it's off to the side. Obviously, you have to be a righty to be a Kohen. So it's off to the person's left side so you could hit with your right. I guess in theory you could do it the other way, but I don't know why. Seems, no, you could, I guess. I don't know why it struck me that way. Maybe I'm wrong. So the Gemara says he stands on a stone. And Chazan HaKnesses omed alav uritzu biyado. What is the whip made out of? Shel egel kfula. It is made out of leather that is doubled from an egel. Shekula echad mishnayim, one of 2 pieces. Vishnayim mi arba, 2 which is 4. So seemingly you're like doing some type of fold over. Vishnei ritzuos shel chamor. There are also 2 strips from a donkey. Olos v'yordos ba, and it's kind of woven through. This is not a fun party. Getting smacked by leather with 6 strips of leather that's not fun. Yada tefach, the handle's a tefach. Rechlava tefach, it's also a tefach wide. So that's the handle itself. It's a pretty hefty handle. Virosha magas al pikreso, and the head of it, when you whip on the back, wraps around to the stomach. Umake oso shlish milafanav v'shtei yados mila achorav. You get 2/3 on the back. That's mila achorav. So you're going to hit in a way where when you strike down, 2/3 of the whip land on the back, and the last third wraps around to the stomach over here. So you're going to see this whip mark that's going to kind of wrap around it's not fully around the person, obviously, but it's 2/3 of the whip on the back, 1/3 around the stomach. This person can't be given lashes while he is standing, nor can he have them while he's sitting. He has to be in this uncomfortable, bent over position. Shneimar, v'hipilu hashofet. And the language of v'hipilu is this person is kind of falling over. V'hamake, make biyodo achas, b'chol kocho. He says that when you hit the person, you're only holding with one hand, not two hands. You're only holding with one hand, but you hit as hard as you can. And someone's reading psukim during this time in order to remind you of the avera that you did, as if the whip wasn't enough. We have to tell you why from Chumash you've done something wrong. Imlo sishmor lasos, vifla Hashem es makoscha bes makos, v'chozul etchilas hamekra. You read those psukim again. Then after that, ushmartim es divrei abris hazos, v'chosem hu rachom yichaper avon, v'chozul etchilas hamekra. You're reading sets of psukim multiple times. Nisht pasha. You don't want to be involved in this. V'imeis tachas yado. Potter. If the person doing the Makkos ends up inadvertently killing the person to whom he's giving Makkos, what that means is that they were omed properly. They did their Amida. Their Amida was done the way that it was supposed to be done, but they did the math properly. The person happened to have died. Okay, so then the halacha is that the executioner is Potter. The person giving the Makkos is Potter. However, Hosiflo od ritzua achas umeis hareza gola al yado. If you do one lash more, then the Chachamim were omed, and the person dies, galus. The first 38 were mutter. Really, I should say, the first 36 were mutter, and you did the 37th. The 37th is only one little whip that nobody would die from, and the previous were all mutter. Nevertheless, it's a chiddush. Chiddush of the Mishnah is that you are a murderer b'shogeg, even though the ma'aseh that you did on its own wouldn't have killed anybody. That's already something worth talking about, because I don't know how that works. Huh?
Your miklat, or is it something?
Gola to an air miklat. You are a murderer b'shogeg.
It's different. Completely different. I'm trying to.
Rashi says, Dibur Hamaskel Hosif Lo Ritzua, 2 lines from the bottom, Umes. Hosif Lo Ritzua Al HaOmed, he adds 1 to the measure, and then he dies, Hareza Gola Al Yado. Below Dami Lehaku Asara Bani Adam Be'eser Maklos. It's not similar to 10 people hitting Da'amrinan Behani Strafin Kulam Turin. Look at this line. Dehahi Ukimna La Begoses Bide Adam. That case was a case of Goses Bide Adam. This is not that. I don't know. It's very interesting, this halacha. Lastly, for today, niskalkel bein bere'e bein b'mayim pater. If the person getting malkos soils themselves, either with feces or with mayim, which is urine, they're pater. Take a look at Rashi. Rashi says, "Dichsiv." Why is this true? V'nikle, the pasuk says. If you take a look at the pasuk on the side. V'nikle achicha le'ineka. If there's some type of nikle, which is a bizayon. So if he's so scared that he defecates or he urinates, the halacha is he's pater. So my brother-in-law was over for Pesach. He said, if anybody's getting malkos, they should just soil themselves. They're instantly pater. Because the bizayon that happens with that is uptur for the malkos.
Most people in Pesach talk about Seder, matzahs.
Your brother-in-law is not Yosef Schwartz. He's the only one. Yachid Miyuchad. Because he heard we were learning Malkos, and he just called that. He's like, Niskalkel ben Berev. It was the first thing he said. Because we had just started Malkos. He's like, oh, Graf Shel Rei. Like, you got it. That's what the Gemara says. And the last din is actually a machlokas tanaim. While it's true that if one were to soil themselves, they'd be pater from Malkos, but there's a difference between men and women. What's that? So says the Gemara, Yehuda Omer, ha'ish berei, for a man, urine is not enough to pater him. He has to defecate in order to pater himself. Isha b'mayim. But for a woman, she doesn't have to get that higher level of a niklet. If she were to have urinated, that would have been sufficient to pater, again, because of that pasuk of niklet. We'll stop right here. Hashem will pick up tomorrow night with a huge blot, Daf Chav Gimel, and I guess on Shabbos we'll figure it out. Wishing you all a beautiful night.